will turn it over to Sonia to get us kicked off.
Welcome, everyone. For those that are new to Bragg, our mission is to provide a form of collegiate interaction in the research community, administration community. We do this by facilitating presentations by subject matter experts, creating an environment to foster peer-to-peer exchange, and seeking and sharing best practices. Today's panel on research compliance is part of Bragg's Research Administration series, in which we invite panelists to discuss aspects of research administration and share best practices. We'd like to introduce Kyrie Williams, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research Administration and Compliance, to give a brief overview of RAC.
Great. Well, thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Bragg, for having me. Again, for those who haven't met, I'm Kyrie Williams, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research Administration and Compliance. And in that, it includes a Sponsor Projects Office, which I think many of you know well, and then also research compliance, and they have crossed paths with some of our units. And for research compliance, that includes, or I like to think about, the first big bucket is subject protections, and that includes our animal research that is managed by our Office of Animal Care and Use. They also oversee and support our IACUC, which we named ACUC. It also includes the Office for the Protection of Human Subjects that manage our two IRB panels. It includes export controls, conflict of interest, and more recently, research security, which is something we continue to build up. And then RAC also includes RAC IT, which supports not only or supports all the units across RAC as well as the campus in terms of research administration and technological support. So that is the full team, and I'm here joined by several of my colleagues who will join the panel for you, and I think we'll go through introductions here shortly, but thank you for the questions in advance. I thought they were interesting, and plan to stick around to listen and see if there's an opportunity where I may need to jump in. So thanks again for having me here and the team here, and looking forward to our session today.
That's awesome. Thanks for being here also, Kyrie, and our panelists. So now we're going to meet our panelists. If each one of you can give us just a brief introduction of your name, title, and the office you work in, that would be great. And starting with ACUC, Rochelle, do you want to go ahead and give us an introduction of you? Tell us who you are, what you do, and
yeah, thank you. Yeah, my name is Rochelle Scales, and I'm the interim associate director for the Office for Animal Care and Use. We're the administrative arm working on behalf of the IACUC, and as Kyrie said, we call it the ACUC here at UC Berkeley. And I've been here for about 15 years. And basically, I assist Adrian, who's my interim supervisor currently, and management of our e-protocol system, and just a number of compliance aspects related to animal research and teaching as used on campus. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Adrian, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to share.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Adrienne Tanner. I'm the Interim Director of Research Subject Protection. I've been the Interim Director since January, but I've been with RAC for over 17 years now. And I'm currently overseeing the Office for Protection of Human Subjects, the Office for Animal Care and Use, as well as the Office for Stem Cell Research Oversight, which is sort of under the umbrella of OPHS as well. So I'm excited to talk with you all today.
Great. And Brian, you want to give us an introduction, please?
Hi, I guess it's good afternoon, everyone. Glad everyone could join us. My name is Brian Orshowski. I'm the Director of Research, Ethics, and Compliance here at RAC. Happy to see everyone. I've been part of the UC system I'm in my 15th year, actually. I formerly had a system-wide role as the System-Wide Export Control Officer, the and several other functions out of the Ethics Compliance and Audit Services Office, including the Insider Threat Program Senior Officer, and I established the System-Wide Export Control Compliance Program and the System-Wide Policy. I've had functions at UCSF as well. And at Berkeley, I oversee export controls. Depending on who you ask, I'm either the export control officer or the interim export control officer. I also oversee conflicts of interest for the research side, as well as responsible and ethical conduct of research. And I also oversee, I'm helping to build out the research security program until the new director, the executive director for research security starts in early October. And hopefully many of you have had interactions with people on my team, which includes Saika Ann Qureshi, who works in responsible and ethical conduct research, Shanti Noriega, who works in conflicts of interest, and also Iris Ortega, who works in both conflicts of interest as well as export controls, and Adrian Griffin, who's supporting our export control function. And glad to see everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay.
I don't know if I was popcorning it back to someone or.
It's okay. So I'm just wanted to make sure, am I still unmuted or muted?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's because I feel like it's coming on the pop-up on the screen. You're unmute. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself. So that's why I'm not to make sure. Okay, so thank you everyone, all the panelists for joining for today's BRAC presentation. We really appreciate that you're presenting your offices. Now we would like if you could give a brief overview addressing the following areas. Number one, in what situations should researchers and or research administrators need to work with your office? And in what are the areas it would not be appropriate to contact your office? Number two is, what are some best practices you recommend when engaging with your offices? Question number three, what common challenges or pain points should we be aware of? And lastly, where can we find additional information or resources about your office? Let me just put these questions in the chat so everyone can follow you along. So yeah, okay. Okay, so I think everyone can see it, and I will follow the order of the Zoom windows as they appear on my screen. So we will start with Adrienne Tanner, the office for she's representing Office for the Protection of Human Subjects.
Okay, and I actually, I thought it would be helpful to do a bit of an overview of OPHS in general. So I do have some slides which I can go through quickly. Let me send a share request here.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. All right, can you all see that? Okay. I always think visuals are helpful with these things. So what is OPHS and what is CPHS? I think these acronyms get used very interchangeably, but they are different. So the Office for Protection of Human Subjects, or OPHS, is the administrative unit that supports the Committee for Protection of Subjects, or CPHS, also known as Berkeley's Institutional Review Board, or IRB. IRB is the generic acronym that's commonly used across institutions in the United States. And our primary mission is to ensure the protection of the rights and welfare of all human participants in research conducted by UC Berkeley faculty, staff, and students. And currently 9 staff members make up OPHS, and there are 28 regular committee members across our 2 full committees. So we have 2 full boards that meet once per month. And here are our staff members. Everyone is very experienced and knowledgeable and ready to help you all with questions that you may have. I wanted to highlight the Belmont Report because this is an important document. It was published in 1979 and is the foundation for the federal regulations, 45 CFR 46, also known as the Common Rule, that govern human subjects research in all institutions that receive federal funding. This document was created by the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects, which was formed in large part in response to public outcry following revelations of the Tuskegee syphilis study, an example of why IRB review is so important. And it includes these three main ethical principles: respect for persons, which translates to the importance of obtaining free and informed consent from subjects; beneficence, which has to do with risk-benefit ratio, so the risk of participating in a study should never outweigh the benefits from the research; and then justice, which has to do with equitable selection of subjects. Subjects should have the potential to benefit from the research. It shouldn't just be a population of convenience. And that's why certain populations have additional protections, such as prisoners, children, others without capacity to give free and informed consent. So when is IRB review required? This is a multi-part analysis. It's required when researchers are engaged in research and the activity involves human subjects. And engagement has to do with Berkeley's role in the research. And research, according to human subjects regulations, is defined as a systematic investigation designed to contribute to generalizable knowledge. And generalizable knowledge can be a little bit open to interpretation. That can be sort of a sticking point. It really depends on what the researcher's intent and goals are for the project. And so there has to be a goal to contribute to a larger category and enhance scientific or academic understanding, which is why, like, a case study with a single subject would not be considered research. It's not generalizable. Similarly, a student project designed to learn research methods would not be research. And then a human subject is a living individual about whom an investigator conducting research obtains information or biospecimens through intervention or interaction with the individual, and uses, studies, or analyzes the information or biospecimens, or obtains, uses, studies, analyzes, or generates identifiable private information or identifiable biospecimens. So determining whether or not something is human subjects research sometimes is not so simple, but that's the first step in the IRB review process. And once something is determined to be human subjects research, then level of review needs to be established. So exempt review, I think often folks mistakenly think that that means it's exempt from IRB review. It's actually a level of review and does require a submission to our office. Expedited review is the next level up, and it encompasses more kinds of research, and it's more of a full review. There's a full application that gets submitted, but it is reviewed by in-house by OPHS staff, and then a designated member signs off on it. Expedited is also kind of a misnomer. It doesn't mean fast. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for review, while exempt review is about 4 weeks. And then full committee review involves studies that present greater than minimal risk to subjects or just simply don't fit into one or more exempt or expedited category. And those are the studies that go before our convened IRBs, who then deliberate and determine whether or not to approve the research. I just wanted to highlight our consent form resources because consent forms are a very important part of IRB review. We have lots of templates, guidelines, and additional information on our website. And then eProtocol is our online application system. All IRB submissions need to come through eProtocol. You need a CalNet ID to access the system. And I've linked a bunch of our resources here regarding eProtocol, and I can also make the slides available afterwards if helpful. I wanted to highlight the funding section because I know there was a question that came in about adding funding. Only the PI of the grant or subcontract can add their own SPO funding information to this section. There is an exception for training grants, but otherwise they need to be listed in the personnel information section in an editing role, log in with their CalNet ID in order to access the SPO funding section, which is linked to Phoebe. So when they click on add, they will get this pop-up window here where they will search for their funding using the Find Funding button. It'll populate, and then when the protocol is approved, that funding information will appear in the IRB approval letter. And any later changes to funding, additional funding, would need to be submitted through an amendment application. This is a snapshot of our workload, so you can see number of protocol approvals over the last 5 years. In the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year, we had nearly 1,700 approvals, and this includes new amendment and continuing review applications. So you can see staff are consistently busy. And I just wanted to highlight our website. We have a lot of resources there. It's a great place to go if you want more information. In fact, there's so much information, we encourage you to use the search bar. That's probably the quickest way to find what you're looking for. And you can always email us as well. Our general email account is ophs@berkeley.edu. You can also schedule Zoom meetings with us. And I've reference the regulations, including the FDA regulations, which we don't get a lot of that because we're mostly a social behavioral focused campus. So that's it for my slides. I hope that covered most of the questions here.
Yeah, I think you
Comment?
covered. Yeah. Now, if you want to add any more thing, please, please feel free to do so. But we will also come later on after the introductions.
Sure.
Over a few questions
I'll stop there.
that,
Yeah, I'll hand it to
from
the
the-
next person.
Okay, sounds good. So let me next I have Rochelle Scales from ACOC, Office
Yes.
of Animal Care and Use.
Yes. And so, I'll just give a brief overview of who we are, what we do, why our office is important to the campus. So we are the Office for Animal Care and Use, also known as OACU. And we keep the Animal Care and Use Committee organized, compliant, functional. We handle basically all of the logistics, communications, as well as regulatory paperwork, so that the committee itself can focus on the ethical and scientific reviews that comes with the animal research protocols that are submitted. So some of our core functions are, of course, we handle protocol management, including the eProtocol system database that we use. We coordinate the ACUC meetings, as well as meetings with the USDA VMO, the veterinary medical officer, when they come around for site inspection and visits. We also coordinate visits with ALAC, which is it's an international organization. It's not a federal agency, but it stands for the Association for Assessment and Accreditation of Laboratory Animal Care, and it is an international organization. We are currently accredited, and basically ALAC gets lumped in with the federal regulatory agencies, basically because it demonstrates for an institution a commitment to high quality, responsible animal care that goes beyond the basic legal requirements to conduct animal research. So we also monitor and interpret federal regulations as things change, as things come about. We keep our committee as well as our research community informed of those changes. We submit all of the regulatory reports to USDA, OLAW, as well as to our institutional official, Kathy Yellick, the semi-annual programmatic reviews. We also follow PHS policy in terms of providing oversight to research after protocol approval. So we have basically a post-approval monitoring program where we are assessing reports that are received, including from the whistleblower office. We also provide education and training, not just for ourselves, but for PIs that are new, onboarded. We train our new ACUC members and provide continuing education for them as well. We also set up inspections, semi-annual facility inspections of all of the animal areas on campus. We maintain documentation and record keeping. So all of the official IACUC records, including meeting minutes, the inspection reports. We also maintain and initiate interinstitutional agreements and MOU documentation. We draft and maintain the ALAC program description, which is key to the documents we have to submit to maintain accreditation. We also assist in drafting and revising new and existing ACUC policies and guidelines necessary for review and approval by the committee, and we do retain documents according to regulations. We also have play an important role in communication and liaison work between a number of units on campus, which includes SPO, EH&S, Occupational Health, and Industry Alliances Office. We also handle any questions and concerns that come in about the research community and animal use on campus. So just to quickly address the questions here, in what situations should researchers and or research administrators work with your office? The more information that you can provide to us, the better. So our contact is acuc@berkeley.edu, and I'll drop that in the chat. But if you have any inquiries about anything related to animal research, including animals used in classes in the classroom, then we encourage you to send that information to our email account, as well as if you know who the PI is, if you know the nature of the work or anything, any information you can provide will help us better guide you in answering your inquiry. And so some of the best practices in that is, again, just providing as much detail as you can when you do reach out to get information. Some of our pain points and common challenges is actually sometimes we're the last to know when a PI is coming on board. And so it would be helpful for us to know, if possible, when a PI has been offered or coming into the university, so that when they do actually join, if we know that they're going to conduct animal research, we can go ahead and reach out to them and let them know some of the preliminary information that they'll need in order to submit a protocol, get their personnel through occupational health, and all of these things that will be needed to be in place before research can start here. Some PIs come from other institutions and have animals that they need to transfer over. So there is a holding protocol for that to happen. Another pain point for us is when we do have protocols submitted, the timeliness in the PI's responses to the committee comments. So in order for the review to continue on to approval, reviewers submit comments, the PIs respond, but sometimes the comments may sit for a number of months, and we do have a soft interoffice policy where if it's been sitting for 6 months, and no response from the PI, then we will withdraw it. And if they're still seeking approval, they'll have to go back through the process of resubmitting it. Another painful point for us is when PIs leave the university and don't notify our office prior to departure. And so then once we learn, then we're scrambling to either find a PI that is taking over the protocol, or if the protocol needs to be closed out because there's no one continuing the work, in which if that's the case, we have to determine were animals left in the facility. We reach out to OLAC, our Office for Laboratory Animal Care, which is our veterinary and husbandry services. So we reach out to them to determine if animals have been left in the facility. Unfortunately, if that's happened, usually they have to be euthanized. So just the communication about when PIs are coming into the university and when they're leaving. And a couple of more painful points, and I'll leave it at that, is when we have complex grant collaborations across institutions. It can be challenging depending on the location of the collaborating institution. If it's outside of the US, if it's federal money involved, do we need to have a foreign insurance in place according to OLAW? We're following the money. We're trying to draft MOUs to capture who's responsible for what and how research animals and materials are being shared. And finally, when we receive FOIA requests, we work with the Office of the President to determine, because often if we get a FOIA request, all the other UC campuses have gotten the same request. So then we work with the Office of the President to determine exactly what information needs to be provided so that we're consistent with the other UC. And so, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Rochelle. So next I will go on to Brian. So if you could start with each of your offices and why it is important in research, and then follow all the questions that I added in the panel. That would be great. Thank you.
Happy to address all those, and in the time permitted, I've got quite a few points to make, so I'll just start off with conflicts of interest. So, COI, what is it? Why it matters? COI ensures that personal, financial, or professional interests don't compromise or appear to compromise our research or institutional results, decisions. It's all about transparency. One theme throughout the areas that I focus on, increasingly in the areas of research security as well as conflicts of interest, and some of our sister offices working with things like conflicts of commitment and central COI, are all about transparency and being able to speak to the integrity of our activities. So it's all about transparency, trust, protecting both individual reputations and Berkeley's credibility. When to work with us, most of our for COI, for the conflicts of interest on the research side, a lot of our interactions really start at the proposal stage, where various agencies dictate the rules that must be applied to, what forms must be submitted. And typically, I know there's a question regarding timing. And one thing I want to speak about that we can circle back to is typically the office reviews all cases, well, they review everything that comes in to see if it's a positive disclosure or a negative disclosure. But for positive disclosures, in some cases, if it's a proposal to a federal agency, those are going to be reviewed once we know that an award is happening for things like the Form 700Us, where we have offices such as industrial alliances negotiating awards. It's more of a sure thing once they're talking with that outside party that they know that they're just working on a contract. And so we can expedite those more closely. Otherwise, once an award comes in, it's much more time sensitive for us to be able to get that reviewed in front of the committee. What we typically do is we have several stages to try to expedite these reviews. For example, depending on the criteria that we have, what's been disclosed, the nature of the review, we do have an expedited process that can be quickly vetted by the COI committee chairperson. They will review that and determine if it needs to go before the full committee, which meets once a month. And it's made up of all faculty on the committee. And they decide if there is a conflict, is it related to the work that's being presented? What are the solutions that must be addressed? Whether or not it can be a managed conflict of interest. And these are our financial conflicts of interest. And whether or not somebody has some interest or some ties to, let's say, an outside company. If it turns out that you're doing research that's sponsored by the same company that you own, you can imagine the nature of the conflict in that situation. Or what if you own stock in a company, but it's a giant like Google or Microsoft? These are all factors that may come in depending on whether you own 0.01% or you have $1 billion worth of shares. For other cases, if it's expedited, it might be something that, let's say, a renewal or something that has already been vetted. It may be where the committee doesn't need to view the full committee, the full case, and in that case, maybe the chairperson can say, "Yeah, we can go ahead and approve this and allow the funding to proceed." Best practices: really disclose early and update often. Use the COI disclosure process we have. It's often different for different forms. For example, we're using DocuSign for Form 700Us. These are the forms that deal with the state forms. We also have a PHS form specific to the Public Health Service. We also have what we call the non-PHS federal form for other agencies such as NASA. And then we have a lot of outreach where people have situations that they're not sure about. They reach out to us up front with questions. One of the best practices really is asking the questions in advance. And then pain points, confusion about what counts as a significant interest. And let me do this. I'm going to put a number of items here in chat for additional information. These transcend COI and include export control and research security. But I do want to point out one new site we have that just went online, and we have a couple new tools for COI. And let me see if I can just copy this one here. And this is a comparison chart. Oh, it didn't, that's not the right one. So we have one, it should be in chat. Let me see if I can just confirm it's in there. Yeah, so there is a link. Oh, I think they all blended together. But just in case, yeah, the conflicts of interest one is a new one that we're going to be announcing shortly that just went online. And the nice thing about this, yes, thank you, Kate. This provides at a glance a nice comparison between the different agencies, conflicts of interest, between conflicts of interest, conflicts of commitment, which is under APM 025 with the old system, and current and pending support. And it also highlights the differences between different agencies, what filings are required, who handles it. So research conflicts of interest is handled by my office, conflicts of commitment through the OAT system. And there's also a process with the Form 700 for the central COI for public officials. And then we also have, we're going to be showing, hopefully, I think in the next week, a new page we have, which is a one-page infographic that's going to be online on our website as well. Next, I want to talk about export controls. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not shipping anything. Why do I need to talk about export controls? And I think there's a big kind of biggest misunderstanding. Maybe I'm getting to the pain point first, but export controls really speak to a critical area of international research and technology transfer. Export controls are federal laws that restrict the transfer of certain technologies, data, equipment, especially across borders or to foreign nationals in the U.S. They protect national security and ensure compliance with U.S. regulations. We typically work mainly with agencies of the federal government, such as the Director of Defense Trade Controls, which handles the international traffic and arms regulations, and that is part of the State Department. We work with the Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security for things like the Export Administration Regulations and the Commerce Control List. We also work with sanctions, international sanctions, or as I like to put it, today's news are tomorrow's sanctions. And we've seen that recently where countries such as Russia have gone from being permissible to do free work with to suddenly being sanctioned and have restrictions. Sanctions are administered by the Office of Foreign Assets Control under the Department of the Treasury, and they have various ways of having restricted party screening, alerts for people with specially designated nationals and other restricted people. And those, in order to understand that, we also maintained, on behalf of the campus, a subscription to Visual Compliance, as well as other tools. Many of you may be familiar with Visual Compliance. If you sign up for Visual Compliance at visualcompliance.com using your Berkeley email, we have a system-wide license that you can use, and we offer training in the UC Learning System as well as quick sheets to help people navigate through that. We also have, we often do licensing if somebody needs to have a transfer of technology that might require permission from the U.S. government. And so, for example, right now we have a device that's a seismograph that's being returned to Berkeley from France where it was repaired. Because it is considered a defense article, it had to be shipped out of the country under what's called an ITAR license under the International Traffic and Arms Regulations. Essentially what that means is although we use it for seismic detection, earthquake management, and data collection, it's also very useful for things like nuclear testing. And as such, it is highly restricted, highly controlled, and those restrictions include who can actually have access to it. So that usually gets buried in a secure vault in the Berkeley Hills. It's coming back in the U.S. after being sent out on license. And we have to make sure that even the access to the device, once it comes back to the campus, which should be within the next week, is handled in a secure manner. And we have other best-in-class equipment from night vision goggles to underwater listening devices that all require ITAR licensing. And of course, that's always an ongoing issue for people that work in areas such as anything that's specially designed for a military purpose or potentially even the space sciences areas. Pain points, there's always uncertainty about what is controlled. We've been investigating something interesting related to certain chemicals that 1 minute they're not controlled, next minute they might be ITAR, and then you got to restrict who has access to them and understand that whether or not derivative materials could also be controlled. And so we had to round up and secure a number of chemicals recently. Certain types of rocket fuels that could be used for a student's rocket club could fall under those as well. So the rules are complex. They change regularly. And right now, the regulations, although we saw over the past 10 to 15 years export control reform, in which many items that were previously under the ITAR, the most severe and restrictive areas of regulations, many of those have been relaxed, but now we're seeing a lot more blurring between research security and additional controls, making it less clear. Whereas maybe before we had a bright line between something that was controlled versus wasn't, that's not quite as clear as it was. Again, happy I could talk for hours on this subject, and we certainly have training. Happy to announce that if you go into UC Learning, you type export controls, you're going to get about 10 different courses that are going to pop up that are all very short. There's an overview that's 30 minutes. All the other courses, I think, are 15 minutes. Export controls related to international travel, international shipping, things like that. And then just a few words about research security, really our newest area and fastest evolving. Research security protects our research from undue foreign government influence, cyber threats, misuse of sensitive information. It's about maintaining transparency, again, just like with COI, and trust while complying with increasingly evolving federal regulations that are bipartisan, often directed towards what they call countries of concern. And increasingly, when you're submitting proposals, in addition to worrying about conflicts of interest disclosures, it's also a matter of disclosing that you've had or certifying that you've had research security training. In fact, Berkeley offers a couple different versions of research security training. The Office of the President updated the ECAS version that we've been recommending people. It came in today. We're working through some glitches. Just in case there's any issues, we have a backup training, and often right now with DOE proposals, they have to be certified that the submitter has actually completed training within the 12 prior months, and so we make that available. In October, additional agencies will be requiring, I think we've got one coming in October 1, another one maybe October 10th. So increasingly, we're going to see that requirement at the proposal stage. So it's important to make sure everyone is caught up on that. And if there is any issues with the new one that come in, we do have backup plans as well. Let's see, best practices. Really, the whole thing of what anyone needs to be aware of is transparency. If somebody is updating their current and pending support, their bio sketches, we have a lot of federal agencies that have reached out where they said, well, we're reviewing a proposal, but we've noticed that the researcher didn't disclose that they didn't do any research in this area, and yet their name is on a publication. Can you explain that? And they've had to meet with the faculty. And in one case, it turned out that the researcher didn't participate in the other, the research that resulted in the publication, the peer review publication, but they were listed as a result of being a mentor to one of the researchers in a country of concern who had been at Berkeley. As a result of that, they were able to explain that away, but it was something that the federal agency, their research security oversight, did locate, did ask about it, and what they're looking for are undisclosed research projects. So kind of the worst case scenario, if you can imagine, is you submit a proposal and then they say, well, how come you've got a secret research lab in a country of concern? And somebody says, oh, well, I just signed some paperwork. I didn't quite know what they were giving me, and they were going to give me some additional support or honorarium. Those are the kind of things that can open up some significant levels of inquiry, all of which fall under research security. Research security itself under National Security Presidential Memorandum 119, or 117 actually, all comes down to a bipartisan focus on protecting the funded research and to make sure that everything meets all integrity, transparency, and that the federal agencies are aware of any other international collaborations that might fall under the doctrine of undue foreign government influence. And so that's, as I say, an increasingly evolving process. Anyway, hopefully we still have time for questions. I think we do.
Thank you, Brian, for providing the clarification, especially about export control, what it covers, and what are the new requirements for research activity. I mean, what's especially for the DoD, DOE. So with that, I will hand over to Kate to go over the Q&A session. So over to you, Kate.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get right into our questions. The first one is for conflict of interest, so this will be directed at Brian. The statement is the COI forms are cumbersome. Is there any opportunity to move into an online system? That's the first part, and then I'll ask the second part.
We certainly hope so. We've been looking into that. We've been working with our IT partners to look at options. I do know of other campuses that have different integrated systems or COI systems that integrate into the proposal management system. We're not quite there yet. We're going to be studying that. A lot of factors come into that. We certainly would love to have a system like that, but being what it is, we have to work within the constraints that were provided. That being said, although there have been improvements, the COI, the 700U forms are all done through DocuSign now. We're trying to see about some of the new forms that are going to be required, such as malign foreign talent recruitment disclosures will hopefully be handled the same way. Also, I do want to speak to the timing issue. I know that's going to be another question as well, but we have been, over the last few months, really responsive as far as being responsive in terms of getting submissions reviewed, getting them before the committee, getting responses out to the faculty and to the RAs, and then as well as where management plans are required, getting that process in place very quickly, often the same week as the committee meets. So anyway, happy to
Let me jump in there a little bit because I think
Yeah,
that
please.
falls more on me in terms of trying to create the resources. I think it's an excellent question. I would love to automate this process just for the forms alone, right? They are cumbersome. Every time I review them myself, I feel for all those we make completed. I think a lot of burden could be eliminated in automating this so that a lot of that information can be captured and RAs don't need to work with faculty to get those things completed outside of the system and so on and so forth. So we've probably did demos on like with 3 or 4 different companies who provide a module. We're trying to find the best fit because it would also need to be able to integrate with Phoebe. And actually more recently, Ken's been experiment with a module we already have, but have not really been able to get set up properly. But I believe there's been some technological advances that allow us to kind of take a fresh look at the software we have that came apart with Koali Koius. But historically, we haven't been able to get it to work right, but we're even experimenting on again. But so excellent question. We don't have it solved yet, but it is on our list of things that we think would not only benefit our staff, the RAs, and the faculty if we can do it.
One other interim step we're taking is to see if there's a way we can actually prevent the need to recreate the forms once they're created. If we can, once a form is populated, we're looking at ways to, until we actually have a new system, to actually be able to avoid the unnecessary and error-prone process of recompleting the same forms each time. So we're working on that as well. We may have a solution that might be a sooner solution. Anyway, great question.
I think that hits to the second part, which is annual reports. If there's a possibility of doing annual reports, but it also sounds like with a new system, you're exploring just the option of being able to put stuff into the system and then being able to select what's applicable to a particular project.
Yeah, and that would definitely make it easier. But so much of the process really is driven by the requirements of the federal agencies that have to have new reviews, because when the committee actually reviews a case, they're looking at the scope of work, they're looking at the PI's statement as to whether or not there is a direct connection between what is listed as a disclosed interest and the subject matter of the research. So a lot of that is really case specific as far as having to be tied directly to each proposal. But the idea of an annual process of updating things that change that are going to stay the same from one year to the next, that would be, I think, go a long way towards addressing the concern.
Thank you. The next question is for Rochelle and Adrian both. We had a question about wanting to learn more about the approval letters. Adrian, you gave a really nice overview of how to add fund numbers as PIs receive awards. Is that the same process for both ACUC and OPHS in terms of e-protocol?
Yes,
It
we have the
is.
same setup in the animal use protocol form as well.
Awesome, thank you. So maybe each of you could speak to, maybe one of you could speak to approval letters, and then the other two, what is the research administrator's role in compliance for ACUC and then for OPHS?
Adrian, you can go first.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, in terms of the funding information in the approval letters, that should automatically populate at least for the SPO funding section. It should. I think the RA's role is perhaps a bit limited in this regard because it's the PI of the grant that has to log into the system and add the funding. It's also the PI's responsibility as they sign off in the assurance section of the protocol, at least on the OPHS side, that the information in the protocol will match what's included in the grant. We used to do a grant protocol comparison, but that requirement actually went away with the updated regs in 2019. It's not under the IRB's purview, but it's still sort of a general requirement. I think working with the PIs closely to make sure that they're adding the necessary funding, that they're obtaining approval. Usually, the grant CGO will ask for that information. I think making sure that submissions happen ahead of time, so you're not kind of scrambling at the last minute to try and get approval, and kind of keeping the review timelines in mind when submitting. Rochelle, do you have anything to add to that for ACC?
Just everything is the same other than we still are tasked with protocol grant congruency, and we provide certification letters as needed, especially for JITs that come in. So it's really critical for the PI to already have that information in the protocol as related to just-in-time funding. Because if it's not in there, then it has to go through the review process. We have a 6-week window from submission to committee review if it needs to go full committee review. So just keeping that in mind, that we do still have to do the protocol grant congruency. And as far as the approval letters, as Adrian mentioned, the funding is listed according to the SPO number, but that's all that's populated into the approval letter along with the approval date and expiration of the protocol, not the funding.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question is for all panelists, and it's providing a very brief overview of the responsibilities for the different actors in each of these processes, one being the PI, the pre-award RA, the SPO or IAO, contract and grant officer. And I will start with Adrian. I think Rochelle and Adrian, you both kind of covered the pre-award RA a little bit, but if you can talk about that as well.
We really don't see this side of things, at least in terms, I think it's probably true for the animal side as well, but for OPHS, we're so focused on the human subjects review process. And I think it's important for the RA and the research team to keep, again, the timelines and deadlines in mind, and making sure that you're planning ahead and submitting protocols with plenty of time to go through the review process and get approval before you want to start the research. But I don't know. Yeah, this is a little bit outside of our world, so I'm not sure that we have a lot to add to it.
Yeah, we work very closely with SPO in handling that. So basically, we're notified by SPO. Usually that's where we receive the first line of notification, in which all of that is typically worked out under SPO. But then, if there's any complex situations related to, if there's a collaborative organization or institution where pre-award or money needs to go to, then again, we're working closely with SPO to handle that. And that's the extent of our coverage of that.
Thank you. And Brian, do you have any thoughts on all the areas that you're covering: conflict of interest, export control, and research security?
Only that the administrative burden in higher education institutions for research is something we're very sensitive to and aware of. And increasingly, we're going to be seeing not just the need for increasing certifications related to research security training and disclosures or certifications of non-membership in certain types of foreign malign foreign talent recruitment, government talent recruitment programs, things like that. Just to indicate that this issue at the proposal stage of things that will have to be disclosed, submitted, are increasingly getting more complex. And as I say, we're very much aware and sensitive and trying to find ways to lessen the administrative burden. So as there may be increasing frustration on the part of faculty and their RAs, we're certainly sensitive to that and trying to find ways to the extent we can, not just lessen the burden if possible, but also we're here to discuss it we're open to ideas as well. And it seems like from some of what we've heard and what I'm seeing in some of the chat messages that I think there's a lot of room for us to collaborate on solutions.
Excellent, thank you. Another question related, and this could have a similar answer, which is the role of the post-award RA. So in terms of if there's funds for animal care, for example, hitting a specific research fund, in your area, and I'm going to open this up to everybody, is there what is the role of the post-award RA, if there's any kind of role within your area?
You mean in terms of like for funding and where things are being? Yeah, we don't see any of that when a protocol is approved. So OLAC, the Office for Laboratory Animal Care, they're the ones who monitor animal census and per diems and things like that. So they have their own system called Cayuse. And so they go through Cayuse basically to figure out how to charge for their services and things that are provided. But we do not see any information regarding that. Sorry. SPO may have more information in regards to that, but
Adrian or Brian, is there anything that's different for your areas?
Well, especially in export control, that really transcends the start of the award. And when you say post-award, do you mean during the course and conduct of the research itself? So if somebody's collaborating internationally, there may be parties that are added after the research starts. There may be travel planned, there may be presentations or sharing research. All those things, depending on if they're working with anyone from internationally or countries of concern, we try to capture a lot of that as part of the Phoebe questions at the proposal stage, whether or not somebody's going to be traveling, whether or not they're traveling or interacting with countries of concern, or whether or not they're going to be planning to ship something internationally. But all these things may require things like licensing on the export control side, where the earlier we find out that that's going to be happening, the sooner we can apply for licenses. That could take anywhere from, in the case of ITAR or IR, could take typically 45 days. In the case of OFAC with sanctioned countries, that could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. So the sooner they reach out, the better. And we also do things like assist with technology control plans, where we set up sort of the firewall around certain identified technologies so that a project can continue. There's so many solutions to kind of overcome some of the obstacles, but a lot of those obstacles are real. They need to be kind of paid attention to, and then we can try to work together to try to find solutions for that. But if the real takeaway is, if somebody's planning anything that's going to be international or involving emerging or critical technologies, the sooner they speak to us, the better.
Okay, excellent. We are just about out of time. Adrian, do you want to address that as well?
I was just going to say, in terms of IRB approval, we're mostly concerned with changes to the human subjects research application. If there's additional funding or if funding needs to be removed, all of that would need to be submitted through amendment applications. And then if there's any non-compliance or adverse events that happen during the course of the research, we need to know about that. But in terms of specifically like where the funds are going and how they're being used, that's not something that we're informed of.
Okay, great. We have hopefully a very quick question for Brian in the chat from Laura. The question is, does UC have guidance on the foreign university sanctioned by the US government? Thinking about it from an HR perspective, if a PI is offering a position to an international researcher whose former position or degree was issued by one of the universities on those lists, does Berkeley double check their hireability?
We have on a case-by-case basis, somebody will reach out, and typically what we will do is see whether or not that individual is individually restricted in any way. Well, the biggest question we're going to have is what list is that foreign university on? There's a lot of different lists. Some of them overlap. For example, there's the 1286 list that's from the Department of Defense that includes countries from Russia, countries such as Russia, China, and others that have universities that are listed as those we can't work with from the perspective of the Department of Defense. But that's not to say that if a person is coming to Berkeley, that they can't work here if they're going to be a Berkeley employee. And if they have a legally issued visa, then it might not be an issue. If they continue or have an ongoing relationship with that university overseas, then it may in fact be a concern. So it's a case by case basis. And also there's various other lists, including one that's provided by an Australia group that monitors the relationship between Chinese universities, for example, and the military in that country. So on a case-by-case basis, depending on what country it is, depending on if the person themselves are not debarred, restricted, and if they don't have that ongoing relationship so that we can work with them individually and not have a direct connection to their overseas school, then that may be fine. But again, case-by-case basis.
So contact you.
That'd
if
be
it
best.
comes up. Awesome. I'm going to turn it back over to Sonia to give our wrap up.
Let's give a round of applause for our awesome panelists today. Thank you everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend today's BRAG meeting. We will place the link to a short survey in the chat. Please take a moment to provide your feedback on today's meeting and make recommendations on future topics. We will also send the survey via email as well.
Access might be requested on that.
Say that again?
It may require access on the form.
We'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay. We are in the process of scheduling a research meeting and we'll send out a calendar invite once we have the date finalized. We are also planning a two-part sub-award panel later in the fall or winter. Stay tuned. Thank you, everyone. Erin?
Thank you. Thanks for everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.